Namaste, Jai Hind. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very, very much for having me here. Thank you, Dr. Vikram Sampath. Your Highness, lovely to meet you. Thank you very much. And a lot of what you are doing or what your family has done, I hope in some form or the other you're continuing to do the same. And that's a question that remains, and I'll come across to you with your kind permission in some time. And of course, WMG, thank you for having me here. I've taken the day off to be here. That's how much history, research, our culture, and Dr. Sampath's work or Vikram's work matters to me, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm so happy to see a full house. It's amazing to see a full house on a conversation which many would find boring and irrelevant. That's what was done. But somewhere, our history has been wiped out from ours. Not just from our libraries, not just from our archives, it's been wiped out from here too. It's been wiped out. We've been weaned away. Let's try and understand this. So many Kannadikas, so many people who've made Karnataka their home, and for them, a lot of what was disclosed today was shocking. Oh, we didn't know. Oh, we didn't know. Oh, we didn't know. So what do you know? What do we know? What do we know about us? Who we are as Bharat, what binds us, what connects us. And that's where I think what Vikram is trying to do with the foundation that he set up for historical and cultural research, and that too for Bharat, is very important. I'm going to focus on that only, ladies and gentlemen, amidst a lot of other questions. One of the first things I want to ask you, Vikram, what is the first aspect? See, if a Swami Vivekananda needed the Wadeyars to fund his trip to Chicago, I know Srila Prabhupada borrowed money from the Birlas, from the lady herself, quietly, to get onto that ship before he went abroad. You need money. You need money. Especially when you want to do research. You need a lot of money. And you are saying, we need to do a lot of research. Who's going to cough up this money is one point. Who's going to do the research is the second point. And three, for whom are we doing it for? Because a lot of us, after this evening, are not going to pick up another book and read it. Touch your heart and tell me how many of you are even going to read the splendors of Mysore. In a full house, after 5 seconds, because other hands were going up, there are some hands that have gone up. But we still don't have a full house of hands going up. Please understand, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't know our history, we are getting rid of our roots. And if we don't know our roots, we are not going to pass on knowledge to our next generation. And that next generation is going to be further delinked. And when you are by the river like a huge banyan tree, your roots are deep. No matter what the flood, the tree remains. But the moment it's uprooted, it's nothing but a log that can just flow aimlessly, endlessly, and it can take wherever the river takes it away. So what do we want us, our civilization, our next generation to be? It's a big question. Dr. Sampath, that's a big ask. How are you going to do it?
Thank you, Anand. And before I come to the first part, of course, Lakshmi is needed for Saraswati to thrive. That is another issue. But I'll first address and also illustrate what is the whole idea of this foundation of Indian historical and cultural research that I have established. What is the idea and the genesis behind it? Now, there are many defects, as I see it, of Indian historiography. I illustrated one of them in my intervention earlier, that it's a very Delhi-centric, narrative. Large parts of India do not feature in it. The south of India or even the northeast of India, these do not get their pride of place, which they truly deserve. There are also, in the discipline of history, a multiplicity of narratives needs to thrive. There needs to be differences of opinion, there has to be dissent, discussion, debate, and all of that. But unfortunately in India, particularly after independence, we've had a very monochromatic stranglehold of a very ideological kind, which has been exerted on the way we look at our own past.
And is that actually history or Distortion?
No, I
Eh,
would not go into social media,
No,
lingo
no.
that way.
Is it
Because,
distortion of history or is it itihasa as it happened?
no, I
What
mean,
has been taught to us and what's been peddled since independence?
no, I
Let me
would not
ask
call
you that.
anything. I mean, there are different versions. I always say, when I describe what is history writing, we all as children used to read this poem of the blind men and the elephant, right? So literally the elephant in the room here is history. And all the blind men were asked to touch different parts of the elephant and say, what do you think, how the elephant looks? So one blind man says it looks like the trunk, one says like the tusk, someone says wide ears, someone says broad, body, and so on. They were all correct, but they were all wrong also because it is a sum of the parts. So history too, I think there are multiplicity of opinions that needs to thrive. There is no one single, there is one truth.
Are you trying to say that known famed historians, when they say that Yudhishthira was influenced by Ashoka and Buddhism, they are actually looking at the elephant like the blind man?
No, this is what happens when a TRP based,
No, but that's the history that's been taught to us. Those are the people who wrote our history books. Those are the people who coined our history text that was taught to us.
So,
yes. I'm challenging Vikram here because we all need to be challenged a little. Please continue, Dr. Sampath.
No, I'm getting there. I'm getting there in steps, Anand. So there's a very ideologically, rooted kind of a looking of our own past. And I'll name it for what it is. It's a Marxist historiography that has ruled the roost. Where even in British India, you had a nationalist school of historiography which thrived with the likes of Sir Jadunath Sarkar, Dr. R.C. Majumdar, V.K. Rajwade, Bhandarkar, several people who were there, even in colonial times. But the sad irony is after independence, the alternative version, so the one set of blind men were completely asked to shut up and not talk. There was only one blind man who was given the authority to tell us everything about what our past is and how do we look at it. And what were the distortions? Of course, there were distortions that were produced because they were limited by their capacity. They were also limited or constrained by the ideology that they were operating under. One is, if you open our history textbook today, and I'm sure you would be looking into what your children or grandchildren are reading, the history of India is never seen as, in first person. There's no sense of ownership. You're almost reading it as the history of some other country. There is a constant sense of being apologetic about your past, always stressing only on the negatives. Every society has its share of positives, negatives. It's almost as if for 5,000, 6,000 documented years of our past, our ancestors did not have any achievements. A complete disconnect from our roots, emphasizing very, very little on the Indian mind and its achievements in various fields, whether it's philosophy, sciences, metallurgy, mathematics, Ayurveda, yoga, all these different branches, architecture. And another colonial construct, which was that we were not even a nation. That it was the British who brought us a sense of identity. And I think a lot of us educated Indians subconsciously, we think of that, if not for the British, we would be at each other's throats.
5-second intervention. Was this history written to make us think we are nothing but a bunch of losers?
Yes, that was the next thing that I was talking about, that a long litany list, and I think that's what we discussed in the last 1 year back with WMG when we discussed my book, Brave Hearts of Bharat, that if you even remember the history books that we read, it was a litany list of battles that we as Indians lost, right from the invasions of the Greeks, the Huns, the Shakas, the Scythians, all of these people, to the Arab invasion of Sindh, the Turkic invasions, the Mughals, the Timurids, and then of course the Dutch, the Portuguese, the French, the British. Everybody kept coming here and we kept covering in front of them and we became subservient. Now today, if we are the only pre-Bronze Age era civilization that is still surviving, our poor ancestors must have put some resistance. They must have shown some courage also and some pushback. Otherwise, we would have been wiped out. Within 50 years of the passing away of the Prophet and the hordes of the Caliph going on an expansionist drive, almost the whole of, Persia, Syria, all these places became Islamized. But it took them 500 years to establish the first Islamic Sultanate in Delhi after the Arab invasion, 712 to 1206. So what was happening during this time? Who were the people who were pushing back? What were the, stories of valor and bravery and, survival amidst all odds? We spoke of Mysore earlier. In the midst of so much, I mean, Tipu Sultan, who did not even let temples survive here, despite that, if our Dasara continues to thrive, there is some amount of resilience that we need to give ourselves credit for, even as we also talk about the social evils. I'm not saying there's a very thin line between jingoism and feeling genuinely proud about what you have done. I think till now, the historiography has always stressed only on this feeling of feeling inferior. And I think unless you have that genuine sense of, self-confidence and self-respect, you may become the third largest economy, $5 trillion, you may have the nuclear bomb, you may have many, many other things. Militarily, you may be strong, you may be part of the Quad, but the hardware is there. But the software is what history gives us, that sense of identity, to identify ourselves of who we are as a nation, as a people, as a civilization, understand our faults, understand the mistakes, try not to repeat them, but also build on the strengths and feel the genuine sense of pride. You need to have a grand Indian narrative.
Yeah,
that is missing, unfortunately, and sadly so after independence.
why is it missing? But that's one point. Secondly, when he said third largest economy, how many of you thought, but our per capita is just $2,500 per head, so we are not yet doing so well as per capita? How many of you thought that? That's what made you feel, you're great. Nah, but you still haven't done this. This is something which is ingrained in our head. Tell me one another nation which has the density of population vis-a-vis percentage of landmass that is the third largest economy in the world. Can anybody else but Bharat do it? With 4% of the landmass and 20% of the world's population. We're doing it. So should we take pride in it, or should we think, no, I don't think we're good enough? See, please realize, ladies and gentlemen, why what people like Vikram are doing is important. It's important because we've been conditioned over not one generation. We've been conditioned over 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 generations to feel subservient at all times. And touch your heart and tell me you still don't do it. It comes as second nature. Touch your heart and tell me that you don't think that when there's a white person in the room, you're supposed to stand up and give that person a little more attention. A non-Indian in the room. Why? Why? And if you're doing it, how is it and why is it that we're doing it? That again goes back to this entire aspect of how the story of Suhail Dev. I know I'm quoting another author, but he's a good friend. But many people are writing, when you wrote Brave Hearts of Bharat, the kings of Jammu and Kashmir, the kings of today's Gujarat, kings here, the kingdoms, the Marathas, and of course further down, there was resistance all around. And there was a reason why. How many of us know that something kept us all together, isn't it? We were all multiple riyasats, multiple princely states, and they were they fighting on religious grounds, or were they fighting politically just to expand their samrajya? What was the story there? And where do you think we need to start?
Yeah. So, that ties into what I was saying earlier, Anand, about we not being a nation. So there's a difference, I think, between a nation and a nation state. A nation state is defined by regular borders, boundaries, politics, by codified laws and so on, and that keeps changing all the time. Borders change. What India was in 1946 is not what it is now, with 3 lines drawn across the subcontinent. What Andhra Pradesh was 15 years ago, it's different today. So borders change.
Madhya Pradesh isn't the same.
Uttar
Pradesh isn't the same. No state.
So borders can change, but a nation is defined by something more, I think, intangible, and that is the common sense of emotional connect, a civilizational unity, and in that there has been an amazing similarity.
How did Hyun Sang describe
the centuries? Like, the famous quote of, the Vishnu Puran, which goes of Uttaram yat samudrasya himadraschaiva dakshinam varshatad bharatam nama bharati yatra santati. This is of the 6th century, 9th century, some say something in the BC, which says the entire landmass north of the oceans and south of the Himalayas, this sacred geography, Varsha Tad Bharatam. Bharata is the name of this country, Varsha, and its children are called Bharatiyas. So there was a very, very clear enunciation of, what this civilizationally we were one. So when our ancestors went on pilgrimages to Badrinath and Kedarnath and all these places, going by foot, through different riyasats, through different, politically different provinces, nobody stopped them and said, you're a foreigner, don't enter, we will kill you. When Adi Shankaracharya went all the way from Kerala and literally circumscribed the country, why did he have to choose 4 cardinal points? He could have just stayed in Kaladi, the small little village in Kerala, 30 plus whatever years he lived, he could have done all his work there. But the very fact that he geographically marked the entire sacred geography, South, Sringeri, Puri on the east, Badrinath and Dwarka, said that this is the expanse of the sacred geography. So civilizationally, I think we have somewhere been one. Politically, things will keep changing. Europe was not the same as it was. Every country, politically, borders, laws, people, that will change. But what is the common connect that brings us all together? So when Rani Ahilyabai Holkar in the 18th century, she resurrects all the temples, the 12 Jyotirlingas, all the 7 Puris, the Char Dhams, bringing water from the Ganga to South Indian temples in Rameshwaram and every other place here, there was some kind of commonality that existed. I think that is important to dwell upon. But I would again urge that, it's a slippery slope. It is a slippery slope that when we, between excessive chest thumping, because the counter to the ideological distortion cannot be another ideological distortion where we say everything about our past was so great, we knew about the nuclear bomb, we knew about the internet, we knew about, that is another
but
loony.
To get to a balance, when you swung the pendulum all the way this way, you will have to swing it back a little before it comes to a place where we have, let's say, as you would want to put it, a balanced awareness of what we did right and what we did wrong.
Correct. And so, unfortunately, I think the counter to the distortion tends to be this, and that is why it is never taken seriously. The counter.
But 5th century AD is more than 2,000 years ago, isn't it?
No, true.
Nearly 2,000 years. In 5th century AD, if somebody is in the Vishnu Puran, I am saying, for argument's sake, that it's not in BC, it's 5th century AD. For argument's sake. 2,000 years ago, somebody had given a construct of who we are geographically and bound us together. Shankaracharya was around the same time. Where are the Jyotirlingas? A lot of you must be very erudite people in the audience. You would know. Think about where are the Jyotirlingas, Shiva's Jyotirlingas, where are they spread across our country? The Shakti Pithas, why are they spread all across our country? Is there a science? Have we spoken about the science behind why these spots have been chosen? Why 16 times Somnath has been attacked? Now, is it wrong for somebody, Somnath was smashed 16 times, you're losers. See, Nalanda, burnt. Even today that station is called Bakhtiyarpur, named after the person who burnt it. Bakhtiyar Khilji, and we are okay about it. So, why? Is it wrong to question all of this and perhaps say correct these notions saying that we should not be okay about it?
So yeah, that is of course a yes to that very emphatically. That really becomes a no-brainer. But the whole idea for that, I would emphasize, needs to have scholarship, needs to have a certain element of intellectual input. It can't be a lot of kite flying, if I can use, which is unfortunately what the counter to a lot of the Marxist propaganda and ideologically driven history has become. And that is where I'd like to bring back the discussion to the foundation, what we plan to do through that. Another problem that we face, and this is unique, I think, in India, and I'd like to address and draw the attention of all of you to that this is probably the only country in the whole world where you can be an expert of a certain era of our history without even knowing the languages that were spoken then or the texts that were written in that particular language. So you can be an expert of ancient India in this country and proudly say, I don't know a word of Sanskrit, I don't know Pali, I don't know Prakrit, I don't know Tamil, I don't know any of the classical languages. You can be a internationally renowned historian of medieval India and say, I don't know Persian and Arabic. I'm not naming any historians. I'm sure you all know whom I'm talking about. They have come out openly and said that I don't know. So what do you rely then on? You rely on Western translations of our texts, right? And there is just that much that, a translation, it literally lost in translation. And
No, no, no.
and a
Western
language.
translations are very good, Vikram Sampath. 33 koti is 33 crores.
So, I'll just give you one example, Anand, and this was a revelation for me in the last couple of weeks. I must mention here that I'm currently working on a book on the history of the Kashi Vishwanath temple and the Gyanvapi, the entire dispute. And in the process of that, and also seeing the history, the legal papers, the contestation that happened right from 1810, constantly the thing is, the Shivalinga is derided as the male organ, right? I mean, that's how your phallus.
Yeah, it's a phallic symbol.
Phallic
That's
symbol,
another way
phallus
of describing
worship.
the Shivalinga.
Yes.
And a lot of people will think, oh, really? Is that true?
So, in the process of writing this, I also wanted some clarity even for myself. That am I actually
Kindly
worshipping
provide.
a phallus? And so I had the great fortune of having long interactions with the Kudli Shringeri Shankaracharya, the latest Shankaracharya, who is a great scholar of Sanskrit, Sri Abhinav Shankar Bharti. And he, just to give you an illustration of this word linga in Sanskrit, it says the original etymology of the word says it is a sign which gives meaning to many other things. That is lingati anena iti lingam. It gives meaning to other things. And he quoted me about 4 or 5 instances where in the Mahabharata, in the Shanti Parva, it is said that the linga can be used as a geographical marker. So, if in Karnataka, you have the sandalwood, abounding. So sandalwood is the linga or the signifier of Karnataka, Chandan. So this is the land of that. So their linga is used in the Mahabharata in that context. In another context in the same Mahabharata, you are using linga as a means to understand subtle characteristics of the world, not necessarily the gross characteristics. The Manusmriti has 2 interpretations of the word linga. One which says, it signifies the education level of a person. Another interpretation of the linga is the physical, religious symbols one puts, the tilak or the vibhuti or something. Yeah. That is also called the linga. Now, esoterically, the linga is seen as a coming together of Shiva and Shakti. The linga represents, again, signifies, it's a marker to something else of the male form, but it is held in a Vedi, which is the female form. And in 2D, if you see, you have the Ardhanarishwara, where the woman, so the larger concept saying, if each one of us has a masculine part of us, a feminine part of us, and unless the yin and yang come into balance, then, the life is not complete. So in 2D, you're shown as Ardhanarishwara. The same in 3D is shown in the form of a linga. Another interpretation through some Linga Purana and this and that says linga is also a symbol of the Trinity. At the base is Brahma, at the middle there is Vishnu, at the top there is Shiva. So one word, so many interpretations. Now imagine a German person, looking at this without any root in our tradition or any understanding of what this means. He'll say, yeah, this is a phallus, linga. So one of the meanings of linga is also, it's a marker of the gender of the person. Again, marker, it's a signifier. It doesn't necessarily mean the actual, genital organ. So if you look at it literally and take it at face value, a totally different, meaning
technically
comes.
What is supposed to be, here sits Shiva. This is the presence. This is where Shiva is. So that is why it is the Shiva Lingam. Yeah. So simply put, this is where Shiva as the deity presides. And that is because he's formless and whatever is the story behind that. But you don't attach a form. So you're putting a stone and you're saying this is where Shiva presides. So
So
that now has become
as Sir mentioned in his question, that there are so many manuscripts in the Oriental Research Institute in Mysore. All over the country, there are millions. The National Manuscript Mission, we have about 3 million, 4 million manuscripts which are dying to be digitized and translated. Now, who's going to do that? So the idea for this foundation is also now me as a modern historian, for me just to understand this concept of what the linga is, and I think this is just 1% of the true significance. It took me 2-3 weeks and my brain was spinning. Now for me to understand and master Vedic Sanskrit, then also Pali, then also Prakrit, then also there's so many different languages, it would take me a couple of lifetimes, and I'm not going to achieve that. I did not, I'm
What's your
trained
IQ to be able to
no,
do
I'm
it even
trained
in a
in
couple of
modern-
lifetimes? So this is going to take much
I-
more than that.
So I'm
This is
trained
so
in
vast.
historiographical research, so I'd rather stick to my competency. So through the foundation, what I thought would make sense is to form small multidisciplinary groups where a modern historian comes together with a Sanskrit Pandit, a Prakrit scholar, a Pali scholar, whatever, Tamil, Sen Tamil scholar of the Silapadikaram age, a geologist, an archaeologist, a geneticist.
Yeah.
When we talk of Aryan invasion, so-called mythical Aryan invasion theory, or you talk of the caste system, was there endogamy? Was there upward mobility? Was there intercaste marriages? A geneticist's role becomes so important. But a historian has never spoken with an archaeologist too. And Sanskrit Pandits will sit and only use their Sanskrit knowledge for karmakandas, for pujas and this and that. But they will not use their Sanskrit expertise for historical research. Because we as a nation don't think historical research matters too much. So through this, what I'm trying to do in a very small way is to push that pendulum which you said had swung to one extent. The only answer to distortion is scholarship. The only answer to all kinds of negative propaganda cannot be further negative propaganda or another kind of propaganda. It has to be rooted in scholarship. So if the primary sources say a certain thing, then you're quoting that, you're taking subject matter experts of that particular text, talking to you about it, and then we all come to a consensus, and then the hypothesis is brought together, and that is disseminated through various ways, through books, through social media and all that. The dissemination part is secondary.
In fact, more importantly,
arms of dissemination.
Is academic papers part
yes,
of
that too?
Because
that
these days academia also need a certain level of...
True. So one of the...
Given what is happening recently.
So for instance, I've just, we are signing up with numerous universities in different parts of India. We just signed up with the Nalanda University, which has been resurrected on the ruins of the Nalanda that you mentioned, where there is a large group of Buddhist scholars who know Pali, Prakrit, Tibetan, monks who come from there, from Indochina region and all of that. Now, if we want, every time there is talk of Islamic conquest and what it did to our civilization, the immediate Marxist response is, but the Hindus also persecuted the Buddhists. But is that statement rooted in any kind of facts? What do the primary texts say? Were they individual acts of persecution by few kings, or was there a theological sanction to that? What do the primary texts in Prakrit, in Tibetan, in Sanskrit say about it? And how will we know that unless we get all these people together in a room, get them to discuss this, investigate, almost like an investigative journalist, go over all these documents and texts, and whatever if it says, yes, we were persecuting people, you should tell it in the way it is. You said itihasa it does happened. If it happened like that, please tell it the way it was.
Say it as it
Don't
is.
make it another distorted propaganda of some right wing, left wing, this wing, that wing. Let it be a centrist wing which talks about a decolonized, a true aspect of our history seen from our own eyes, seen through our own scholars, investigating our own scripts and texts, and not something we have outsourced to the Western scholars. Even today, Wendy Doniger and all these other people
They're attacking
are the ones
Bhandarkar
who are
Institute.
telling us what our religion, our faiths are, because nobody here has bothered to do that. We don't have Indology departments in Indian universities. We don't have civilizational studies. We don't have departments for study of faiths, comparative studies of faiths in India. So obviously someone else is going to take up the matter. So what is the counter to that? Is it just social media on Twitter? Are you going to fight with them? Is it going to be through politics, through political parties? I don't think it comes on the agenda of any political party or government. And
No,
I'm glad it doesn't.
it has to be scholarship. And since you're working with the scholars in Nalanda, please find out for me as a small request whether Ashok had converted to Buddhism before he waged war with the Kaling, or he turned to Buddhism after he had massacred
He
all of them.
already had 4 years before the Kalinga War. So yeah.
Now, another thing which is not written in our history books, and we are asked to perceive things differently. How old was Ekalavya when he went to Dronacharya? Another aspect of Mahabharata which is again distorted. Was Dronacharya casteist, or did he really take, what was the reason behind what happened? How was Ekalavya ever related to Krishna? That's another story which is again there in the Mahabharata. So these are all parts which are now coming to the fore. If we are reading more often, we are perhaps a little more aware. But this is not going to be easy. How are you going to pick and choose your subjects? Are you going to pick and choose your subjects based on who commissions the work from you? Or are you going to go and look at, say, let's try and create endowments for certain work, and then this is what I want to do and I need somebody to back me?
True. So both of those, Anand. So one part is, of course, certain projects and themes which are personally I'm quite passionate about. One is the Hindu-Buddhist relationship. I also want to investigate the growth of the caste system as it is known today. What has been the trajectory of that?
Casta is a Portuguese word. Yeah. So the Varna system is what you're saying, and the evolution of how it happened.
For common parlance. And the Dravidian movement, let's see where the roots of that were. Was it in separatist 18th century missionary accounts, which later moved into? So there are certain things which I am personally passionate about, which I would like to work on. Before I lose my train of thought, I'll complete it. The other set of things which I'd like to do is by giving scholarships and fellowships to individuals, which will be announced nationwide. About 5 or 6 or 7 scholars, depending on what the quality of the input is, and they can choose the topic that they would want to do. They'll be given a substantial amount of money for a period of 1 year, during which they can work on their themes. And the ask is, at the end of it, you need to come up with a publish-worthy manuscript, which can then be routed to mainstream.
So who mentors them? You will mentor them?
Yeah,
Will there be a team? Is there a group of people?
We have a set of advisors who we've set up with university professors and even outside India. Probably get a journal out also on Indian history, which has never happened, an EPW equivalent of Indian history. So that revival has to happen that way. I agree that it's a very difficult task, and I really don't know what I'm setting myself against. But then if you keep on, on social media, you say, let's ban Romila Thapar's books. Let's, take away Irfan Habib's books, R.S. Sharma, D.N. Jha. You keep demonizing these people for what they have done. But fine, ban it. What are you going to replace it with? Correct. Where is the alternative that is written, and who is writing it? Fighting every day on social media is not going to, finally you may do all that and you may score some brownie points on television. Your TRPs may go, you may,
Frankly,
your channel might
it's okay to take those jibes at me, but you really think, Vikram, I have done more work for TRP or more work for trying to get a certain level of awareness on Bharat? So, because a lot of times these conversations are not had. Nobody is asking for banning them, but they have to be aggressively countered. And I totally agree. But no, I totally agree with you when you say that it has to be countered with facts, with scholarly work. And somewhere what you started to do, or what you've set out to do, needs to be done at an accelerated pace. We are not looking at, I hope we all appreciate the gap that we need to cover. It's nearly a century's worth of brainwash, if not more, which needs to be addressed in the next, say, 10 to 15 years. That means on a yearly basis, we need to have 10 or 12 such scholarly papers which challenge a gamut of aspects, starting with science, architecture. There is so much of our Bharatiya knowledge system and Bharatiya scriptural aspects, which a very, very learned person once told me that most of our scriptures, really 95% of it is actually science, is steeped in science and spiritualism, and only about 5 to 6% of it, give or take 1 more percent, 2 more percent, is actually theology or very deeply religious instruction. So if there is 95% of this work and it spreads. That itself is challenged. So there is so much work that needs to be done. What are you expecting from who's watching us today or who's here today?
Well,
Can they come out and support you?
of course. I mean, as I said, support of all kinds is what an initiative like this
First,
would
start by
thrive.
reading his work.
No, that of course, I mean, that's fine. It depends. Everyone need not be interested in
Because you can
history, but-
publish as many books and papers you
True.
want, Vikram, but unless people are reading and then they are passing on that knowledge to the next generation,
No, but
it's going to be once again.
I have a lot of hope, Anand,
dawning
at least in the younger generation.
Are
I think
people reading?
They are reading immensely. We underestimate them and we feel condescending and say, oh, the young are not reading. Of course, a lot of them are also indulging in, there's so much of information explosion and so much of social media intrusion in our lives, but people are still reading. When I see the fact that those two Savarkar volumes, which seem very daunting, the fact that they sold over 1 lakh copies among them was not something that I ever expected. Similarly, I see what Sai Deepak, my other good friend and fellow author, has written. That's also sold several lakhs of copies. So people, I don't know if people are just buying it and stocking it in their house and it's gathering dust, but at least, people are probably getting aware. Waking someone from slumber was the bigger task. The first task is somehow slightly achieved. Now the next step, we are always slow people. We'll go.
Well, confession mode. I got the second part of his book first, and then I got the first part of the book. But I read 30 pages of the first part of the second part, and I couldn't sleep all night because I was shocked. I was shocked beyond belief of what he had written in Savarkar. The point of there's so much information, ladies and gentlemen, and then. The next day I went back and picked up that book and read another 30 pages and I couldn't sleep another night. And I was like, dude, what have I been thinking all this while? Or what have I been conditioned to or I've been fed? And what he's done is scholarly work. And that's the reason why the early part was to challenge him a bit. It was not just that I'm going out there with an agenda to, cancel somebody out. That's not his agenda. And that's where the respect for Vikram's work grew for me. Because when I read Savarkar and even Gauhar Jaan, a lot of it was commentary. It was not, and based on a lot of research which is there, and there is reference. In fact, some of it I went back and cross-checked myself, just to see if he's true to his word. So we got to do our due diligence. So we did that. So I did that, just certain pages, certain parts. And a lot of what he has done is there in Marathi literature. The beauty of our country is the fact that there is so much of linguistic literature, literary work which is there, which we don't know. English speaking, Hindi speaking, who don't know what work is there in Sanskritam, what is there in Tamil, like he was saying, what's there in Kannada, what's there in Marathi. And if all of that has to be studied, imagine all of us, if we take one project as part of his foundation and say, we will do it, and if all of us decide to fund the other person's project, we still will not be able to complete in our lifetimes the kind of knowledge systems which is there for us to dive into. So, let me ask you this. 3 or 4 subjects that you really want to dive into immediately, which you think you need immediate support and you want to start, which are there, the low-hanging fruit, ready for the picking.
None of the fruits are low-hanging. Everything is very high up there. And I think one needs to have a ladder, several ladders to reach that fruit. The Hindu-Buddhist project is something that we've actually kickstarted, and maybe from 2024, first quarter, is when we probably start off. We're still putting together the team, and it's very fascinating to have Mr. K.K. Mohammed is one of our advisors, one of the leading archaeologists of the country, who's also helped me connect with some of the young archaeologists. I don't know how often we've had geologists, archaeologists, historians, typical Sanskrit Pandit from a Gurukulam sitting together and working on something. I'm quite eager to see what will come out of it. It's an experiment, and I hope if it succeeds, it can be scaled up to several notches. And I think that is I can't reinforce enough or underscore enough that scholarship is the only answer. And we know all of us have these complaints. The government is not doing much. The government is not changing textbooks even after 10 years, which is legitimate. But while they do what they do, they also are not taking it seriously because they don't think it is a matter of priority for anybody. Unless and until a lot of us, civil society, say this is not just a discipline which our sons and daughters and grandchildren are just going to memorize, vomit in the exam and forget all about it. It is much more than that. It is something that connects us to our roots. It gives us a sense of identity, where we came from and where we will go. And we would expect you to do the right thing. Otherwise, you don't get our vote. I think the politicians will understand only that language.
True.
But till they do that, I think it's up to civil society, it's up to people like us, people like all of us, who can contribute in numerous ways. Everyone cannot start doing a research. Some can contribute through some other ways, in kind, in cash, in other ways. You are such a great amplifier through, despite my friendly jibes, nothing against.
Not at all, you're most welcome. That's what makes it fun.
We can't survive without the media, the social media, all of this. The arms of dissemination then become. So we entice you said a lot of people don't read. Yeah, maybe a 1,000-page book or even this Mysore book may seem very daunting. But if you cull out small nuggets out of it, someone helps making interesting Instagram reels. Now, nobody can say information can't be processed and presented in multiple interesting ways. And as a teaser, as a trailer for the youngster, saying, this is what it is. Did you know this? Did you know that? And then slowly draw them into the habit of reading. That curiosity is arisen in their minds. And that's how slowly, I think, at least I'm thinking for the next 50, 60, 100 years, when I'm dead and gone for sure, but at least, the base has been set on which others can probably build on it and do something rather than constantly complain. I think we as a nation have become a nation of complainers, people saying nothing is working, this is not working. I think Gandhi's thought there, I agree with, be the change that you want to see. So in a very, very small baby step, I hope, many more people join hands and it becomes a larger movement to resurrect India's rich history, as this title, this session has been.
Yeah, resurrect and recorrect somewhere. I keep believing that distortion is to a level that it needs to be sorted out. Neeraj Attri, another author, ladies and gentlemen, a teacher, since we are being very generous about author literary work, he's written a book called The Brainwashed Republic. It's a small book, but it's an eye-opener. So that can be a stepping stone. And he's a teacher too. So he's teaching science. And he's teaching kids to go to the Olympiad. And he says, Bharatiya students are fantastic when it comes to science, chemistry, maths, any of the subjects, academic subjects. You know where we fail, our children fail, when it comes to the culture aspect of it. We are hollow because we are left stumped to even describe who we are as a nation, as a people, as an entity, as Bharatiya. The Japanese, clear about it. The British, very distorted version of how great they were. All the massacres, all the looting, plundering they've done, none of it is taught to them. But they've taught that they're great. But some have clarity. The Russians have clarity. The Americans have clarity. Distorted or not, but they have clarity. And they believe in something that talks themselves as great. As gives them the confidence about and pride about who they are. Bharatiya students have a problem here. And that should concern all of us. That should concern all of us. And that's why what he's doing is phenomenal. So, well done, Vikram. All the best to you.
Thank you.